Good day! So for today's educational video, I'll be sharing to you some techniques on how to use a watercolor as your medium in arts for beginners. But before that, we all know that watercolor is a medium of art made with water-suitable paint with transparent properties. So this type of medium is very challenging, especially for beginners like me. In fact, it is so hard for me to switch to watercolor since I am more skilled using oil paints and pastel colors. But with these simple warm-up activities, we'll begin to understand how watercolor really works. And hopefully, by watching this video, you will learn some techniques on how to use watercolor as your medium in arts for beginners. First, of course, you need to prepare your materials, and for me, the materials I'll be using are my pencils, my paint brushes, and most importantly, my watercolor paper and my watercolor paint. I also prepared water that I'll be using for my mixtures of adjusting the colors that I'll be using. Second, think of what you want to draw and paint. For me, I'll be doing mini paper arts, so I'll be cutting my paper into 5 square pieces. And remember that it depends on what you will draw and paint on the type or size of the paper you will be using. Third, we can now start the sketching. So this will be your tentative draft representing the features of your freehand illustration. And then, you can now also start to emphasize your sketch and draw it carefully and clearly. After that, clean your brush and start painting using your chosen strip of color. Slightly mix it with water. And then, start to brush strokes it on your drawing, so it should be soft and subtle to avoid harsh changes in tone so that the gradient doesn't look choppy. One technique is that start with light colors, little by little keep adding a bit more of the chosen color. Try this as many times as you feel necessary and try to experiment with different color tones. Always remember, before picking up more color, you need to rinse and pat your brush on a piece of cloth, paper or tissue in between so that your brush is clean. Always observe your paper. Let your first strokes dry and you will notice how the colors tend to fade. And that will be your cue to continue painting where you left off the faded color. This transition of mixtures will completely transform into a beautiful gradient of colors. The good use of brush control is also important, so it makes the textures of the watercolor beautiful. You can repeat this simple practice exercise as many times as you feel necessary. It is a great way to get into the illustration style, watercolor painting. And that's all for our educational video on how to use watercolor as your medium in arts for beginners. I hope you have learned from this video, and it is my pleasure to share my ideas with you. By the way, this is ENGL ED, an aspiring artist. Thank you.